There's a face you've never forgotten. Sharp cheekbones, ice-cold eyes, a presence that made heroes look ordinary. Lee Van Cleef owned the screen without saying a word, yet Hollywood tried to bury him in the shadows. For decades, we believed Clint Eastwood was the lone legend of the spaghetti western. We were wrong. What if the most dangerous man in cinema history wasn't a rival to Eastwood, but his equal? What if Van Cleef's silence about their relationship wasn't modesty, but calculated wisdom? Late in his life, Van Cleef finally spoke the truth about the man who became an icon, and his words shattered everything we thought we knew about fame, talent, and what it really means to be unforgettable. This isn't a story about jealousy. It's about two men who escaped the same prison, chose opposite paths to immortality, and changed cinema forever. One became a king, the other became a legend. Van Cleef spent the 1950s grinding through countless westerns and television shows, his striking angular face relegating him to nameless henchmen and forgettable villains. Meanwhile, Clint Eastwood found himself locked into Rawhide, a television western that ran from 1959 to 1965. For 7 years, Eastwood played Rowdy Yates, a role that brought steady paychecks but creative stagnation. Both men understood they were being suffocated by Hollywood's inability to see beyond their initial impressions. Van Cleef looked dangerous, so he played danger. Eastwood looked heroic, so he played the sidekick hero, week after week, year after year, watching his film ambitions slip further away. The escape route for both men came from an unlikely source: Italy. When Sergio Leone began reimagining the Western genre with darker themes and operatic violence, he needed actors who could embody moral ambiguity. Hollywood had dismissed both men as limited, but Leone saw untapped potential. For Van Cleef, the role of Colonel Douglas Mortimer in For a Few Dollars More in 1965 represented his first true leading role at age 40. For Eastwood, already cast in Leone's A Fistful of Dollars, it was the beginning of a transformation from television actor to international icon. What happened on those Italian film sets reveals everything about the fundamental difference between these two men. Van Cleef studied his craft obsessively, developing what film critics would later call weaponized stillness. As angelized in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, he perfected a technique of minimal eye movement and delayed reactions, creating dread through the complete absence of unnecessary motion. While other actors added gestures and expressions to fill screen time, Van Cleef subtracted everything non-essential, understanding that cinema rewards restraint more than theatricality. Every micro-expression was calculated. Every moment of stillness was a choice. He turned villainy into an art form that demanded the audience's complete attention. Meanwhile, Eastwood was discovering his own relationship with stillness, but from a fundamentally different philosophical position. He recognized early that he could let the camera come to him rather than performing for it. But where Van Cleef saw acting as a complete art form in itself, Eastwood viewed it as merely the first step. By 1971, Eastwood had directed his first film, Play Misty for Me, launching a directorial career that would eventually overshadow his acting legacy. He wanted total creative control, directing, producing, shaping entire cinematic visions from concept to final cut. Van Cleef never pursued that path. He never sought the director's chair, never lobbied for producer credits, never built a production company or brand around his name. His ambition was singular and pure, to perfect the craft of screen presence. Nothing more, nothing less. This wasn't a failure of vision or lack of business acumen. It was a fundamentally different artistic philosophy. Eastwood wanted to build empires, control narratives, shape Hollywood itself. Van Cleef wanted to build performances so powerful they would outlive him, transcend trends, survive forever in the collective memory of cinema. Both men succeeded brilliantly, but on completely different terms that reflected their deepest values. The industry's economic structure ensured that their financial rewards would never be equal.
Hollywood's contract system in the 1960s and 70s was brutally hierarchical, favoring leading men over character actors, regardless of talent or screen impact. Leading actors could command fees 5 to 10 times higher than even the most acclaimed supporting performers. The spaghetti western budgets, while revolutionary in style, remained modest compared to American studio productions. Van Cleef achieved artistic immortality in Europe, but the financial rewards remained a fraction of what Eastwood accumulated. Van Cleef understood this reality with clear eyes. Screen immortality and financial success were different currencies, and he'd earned one without bitterness about the other.
There was another structural limitation Van Cleef faced that Eastwood never did. Van Cleef's unforgettable face became both his signature and his cage. Hollywood simply could not imagine him in romantic leads, comedic roles, or sympathetic father figures. His filmography after 1952 shows an almost unbroken string of villains and anti-heroes. Eastwood, with his more conventionally heroic appearance, could transition between genres: westerns, crime thrillers, romantic dramas, even comedies. Van Cleef recognized early that Hollywood's imagination was limited. If they saw a villain, fighting that perception was futile. Better to become the best villain cinema had ever seen. When the spaghetti western boom collapsed in the mid-1970s, Van Cleef faced a brutal reality that Eastwood would never experience. Hollywood had no roadmap for age and character actors who'd built their fame overseas. While Eastwood was seamlessly transitioning into directing and producing, constructing a creative empire that would span decades, Van Cleef found himself navigating a far more uncertain landscape. He took whatever work materialized: exploitation films, forgettable European thrillers, low-budget action pictures that covered expenses but rarely utilized his formidable talents. His filmography between 1972 and 1980 tells a sobering story of diminishing production values and inconsistent material. Yet he worked relentlessly, because that's what dedicated actors do. The camera was his craft, his identity, his purpose. Even when the industry moved past the genre that elevated him to stardom, Van Cleef refused to stop. This context makes his casting in Escape from New York in 1981 profoundly meaningful. As Police Commissioner Bob Hawke, Van Cleef infused a science fiction action film with his unmistakable gravitas, demonstrating that his screen presence transcended Western dust and Italian sound stages. It was more than just another role, it was vindication. American cinema had finally acknowledged what European audiences understood instinctively for years. Lee Van Cleef possessed a magnetic screen authority that elevated any project, any genre, any budget, simply through his commanding presence. The personal toll of this career was substantial. Like many actors of his generation, Van Cleef was a heavy smoker, visible in countless photographs and film footage from his era. When throat cancer was listed alongside heart disease on his death certificate in 1989, it reflected lifestyle choices common to his time. From the 1970s onward, he lived with serious cardiovascular disease. By the 1980s, a pacemaker regulated his failing heart, a mechanical reminder of mortality that somehow allowed him to continue doing what he loved most. Even in his final years, his performances retained their razor-sharp intensity. Late in his life, Van Cleef spoke candidly about Clint Eastwood, and his words revealed a man at peace with his own choices. He never pursued Eastwood's path to total creative control because he didn't want it. He never resented Eastwood's greater fame because he understood they were different kinds of artists. Eastwood built an empire in front of and behind the camera. Van Cleef built something equally enduring, a gallery of performances that remain impossible to forget. His grave reads, "Best of the Bad," a perfect epitaph for cinema's greatest villain. Van Cleef proved that immortality isn't measured in box office numbers, but in unforgettable presence. He earned his legend, one menacing glance at a time. If this story changed how you see Hollywood's legends, hit that like button and share it. Some truths deserve to be remembered. Thanks for watching.